Content warning for today's episode. The audio ahead gets intense and may contain graphic horror content. As such, I'll be including the content warnings at the beginning of the audio clip that plays at the beginning of each episode of today's podcast recommendation. And as always, Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Deviser contains extreme subject matter, graphic descriptions of violence, self-harm, and mature themes throughout. Listener discretion is strongly advised. For a full list of content warnings, head to deviser.ca.
Please. Come on. Calm down. Please. Dad, don't. Please, Dad. Please, Dad.
Come back to reclamation.
No, Dad. Please. No. Hello? Dog, hey boy.
Sun is tasked with bringing humanity back to Earth as the sole captain, along with an AI, of a spaceship carrying sleeping passengers. There are things about his journey that Sun is slowly figuring out, and what he learns will change everything forever. Deviser is a horror podcast that is completely created, yes, completely, voice acted, edited, composed, everything by the one and only Harlan Guthrie. It only runs for 7 episodes, or roughly 2.5 hours of audio. Deviser is a sci-fi dystopian horror podcast that honestly blew me away when I first listened to it. I wasn't going to recommend this show for a while, only because I had done Malevolent as the very first episode of this whole podcast recommending series. And I kind of like giving shows that I listen to multiple shows made by the same group of creators, and I like to have a nice decent amount of space between each one personally, just so I'm not sitting and recommending everything by Hating Sloth Studios only, or by Storm Branch Productions, or Rusty Quill, or whatever. But I listened to the show in one sitting and was thinking about it constantly for the whole week afterwards, and I was like, oh, I gotta make my next video after the Jar of Rebuke one this show, because I just can't stop thinking about it. And I also gotta re-listen to it before I go and recommend it to people, because I was just, the show is just so good. It's only 7 episodes, it's really short, and I'm like, please listen to it. If you haven't listened to it, please listen to it. I don't want to talk about what the show exactly is about. One, because of how short it is. It's so short, but it kind of, at least to me personally, just with stuff Harlan was saying on Twitter and Tumblr about the show, I kind of had an idea of some of the direction the show was going, which didn't ruin the experience for me, but definitely made me think after listening to this that I would have loved to have gone into it not knowing what the heck I was getting into. So, other than that little blurb, I'm not going to talk about the plot at all, or, any of the details of the story. When I was thinking about it, when I was trying to describe it to my friends, because they were like, I'm interested in Deviser, but I don't listen to Malevolent, is it good? Can you tell me about it? Because I was telling them, oh yeah, I listened to this, the moment I woke up the morning it came out. I kind of described it to them as, 2001 A Space Odyssey meets Outlast and Soma, which to other people might not be as accurate, but then some other people might be like, yeah, no, kind of fits. It's kind of, just if you want to know the vibes, those are the vibes. The show is just really good. It's really good. I love Harlan's writing. And he's also just an amazing voice actor in general. So I guess you could consider this not only a Deviser recommendation video, but and also just Harlan Guthrie is a great podcast creator video. Hi, Harlan. Anyway, I definitely want to point out, though, that you gotta look at the content warnings for this show beforehand. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the show does have content warnings at the beginning of each episode of the podcast, which is great. I love that. However, that's kind of like more of a general, across the board, like, basic, like, hey, if this stuff is going to make you upset, you probably shouldn't listen to this. But there's certain episodes that have certain triggers in it that I know would bother some people. That didn't bother me so much, but at least me personally, I prefer there would be content warnings for it. So I know there's a link to the transcripts that do have individual content warnings for singular episodes in the descriptions of episodes, whichever one you go on. Please look at them. Please look at them. There was one episode that had an ending that I was like, let's just say, if you know the episode, if you know the episode that I'm talking about, let me just say it hits very, very, very close to the fact that I was listening to it at work. And if you know where I work, it was a very awkward experience doing my job and listening to said particular episode, which is kind of like, Daryl, where do you work? You don't need to know that. But yeah, please check the content warnings. This show gets so intense, very intense. Sometimes I think it gets a bit more horror gruesome than Malevolent even does. And I'm kind of comparing it a little bit to Malevolent just because it's Harlan's other horror show that he's very well known for. And it does get very intense. Yeah, just generally just, if Malevolent is too, how about this? If Malevolent is too much of a show for you to listen to just because the horror in that show disturbs you enough, this would not be the show for you. However, even if you are somebody who listens to Malevolent and is okay or mostly okay with the horror in Malevolent, I definitely recommend that you check the content warnings anyway. I'm a big stickler for content warnings just because I don't recommend people shows based off of representation or just the fact that the story is really good. I actually do have a video planned about something that I've been thinking about for like months and months and months now. I just haven't gotten around to writing a script for it. But, you know, because I usually do these recommendation videos unscripted, just because I like talking about what's on my mind rather than reading off of a script. But the other thing that I do want to talk about, I do want to write a script for, so keep an eye out for that in the future, because I know I haven't done any talk videos that are not just revolved around podcasts. Other than that, though, if you don't mind horror, if you don't mind, basically, if you're like okay with like a majority of whatever horrible content that could be out there, I recommend this show. I recommend this show so much. I know you're probably like, oh, I want to know what the plot is about. Besides that blurb at the beginning, I honestly think this is a show you need to go into without knowing like plot details. I know a lot of these that I discuss plot details, but the show is so short. It's sci-fi, it's horror, it's dystopian. It's dark, it's gritty, it's messy, I love it. It's very, very, very good. So please go check it out. Please give it a listen. And if you have given it a listen, please gush to me about this podcast with me because I loved every second of it. So that's the end of this video. I know it's a very short one, but you know, whatever. Just go listen to the Deviser. I'm going to be linking the Invictus Patreon down below, just like I did with the Malevolent video. And also, if you haven't seen my Malevolent video, go watch that, because Malevolent is also really good. And as always, leave me more suggestions for podcasts to listen to. I have like a whole list of like 30 plus podcasts that I already need to make videos for, but I am always listening to more, and my to listen to list is like 5 times bigger than my already listened to list. So take that as you will. So as always, goodbye. Follow me on my socials if you want to, because I love it. That's a thing that YouTubers have to do, I guess. I don't consider myself a YouTuber, but... And, as always, stay frosty.